Welcome to Spirits and Stories, a place where we slow things down and talk about the moments that shaped us. The stories behind the scars, the victories, the lessons. Every guest brings a journey. So settle in. This one's meant to be felt.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Spirits and Stories. Hey, our guest today is Mr. Dr. Robert Bleck, psychotherapist, former university professor, and the creator of Source Completion Therapy. Robert is not only a healer, but a survivor. After enduring severe abuse in childhood, he dedicated his life to understanding pain, trauma, and the human capacity to heal. Through decades of clinical work, he developed a powerful three-phase process designed to permanently heal emotional wounds at their source. His book, Give Back, The Pain Shares, Real Stories of Transformation and the Method Behind Them, Robert has helped thousands reclaim their lives. Out today, he's here to show us how healing is not just possible, but it's permanent. Hey, how's it going, Mr. Bleck?
So far, well, thank you. Pleasure to be here and speaking with you and your audience.
Awesome, man. So, yeah, this show has been around for a hot minute. I think we're on year 4. And, it was therapy for myself back 4 years ago, dealing with PTSD. And I found telling my story really benefited and helped me in a lot of different ways, and it kind of put me on this journey. So I'm excited to dig into your story. Why don't we start with a little bit of back history? Kind of tell everybody what led you down this path.
Sure. Well, the start of my life was very painful and difficult for me. My mother, who was abused herself as a child, was filled with anxiety, rage, and anger, and that fury came out on me. Starting when I was about 3 years old, I was beaten, I was degraded, and I was abused what seemed like every day. When she would beat me, it was sometimes, and I was a little boy with a small body. I was 3 years old when she started. She would beat me with a fist, closed fist, and sometimes with an open hand. She would beat me with belts, with buckles. She would beat me with, she liked the kitchen, the big wooden cooking spoon she would beat me with. And anything that was near her, whether it was a shoe or something that she could find to throw at me. And that was indeed painful and left bruises. She also degraded me. She would humiliate me in front of friends, in front of relatives, and just however she could minimize me and demean me, she would do it. So one time she got creative with her abuse. Again, I was about 3 or 4 because my sister wasn't born yet. That's how I know the history. I got up, I would have nightmares because of what she did to me. And I went into my parents' bedroom, and she grabbed me by the arm, brought me back, and she tied me to my bed. She would tie me with the ropes. The ropes went around the bed, under the bed, and across my chest. And as I talk to you, I could feel them, and I feel the fear and terror. Again, I was 3 years old. I thought I was being killed, so it was terrifying. Yeah. So a few of the other, I had symptoms from it, nightmares I would have. I was frightened of the dark. I was, terrified of that. I slept with the light on for years until I was in teenage years. I bit my nails, all the symptoms of anxiety that I had. I didn't know at the time. I was just had these symptoms. It started to turn around when I was about 9 years old, and she was still hitting me, beating me, degrading me. I began to feel a deep empathy and a deep compassion and a deep sympathy for those around me or those that I saw in some way who suffered and struggled, whether it was a child being bullied at school, whether it was someone in poverty, whether it was someone grieving, whether it was someone in the armed services that had things like PTSD, and whether I saw it on TV or read it in a book, I felt compassion for these people. And that was the foundation of me starting to want to do something to help humanity. So what I did, I had to come up with a plan. I had to survive the house that I lived in, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and how I could survive that. So what surfaced for me, I found I was good at sports. I became an athlete. I played soccer and hockey. I played that through high school and college, and I got strong. I got strong at it. I felt confident. I felt camaraderie with those who I who I played with on my team. So it was pleasant for me. I also found nature was very comforting and soothing for me. I would get up really early in the morning. I would watch the sunrise, and I would listen to the birds sing, and I felt they were singing to me, and that was really comforting. And at night, I loved the stars. I loved on a clear night watching the stars. So all of that was comforting, and it was not healing. It didn't heal what I had inside. It was all temporary because I knew I still had work inside. Those feelings that I had of what my mother caused was still in there. So at about age 14, my mother had still been hitting me. She came at me ready to pounce on me with fists closed. And I held my palm out and I said, no, you can't do that anymore. I'm stronger now. I'll defend myself. So she looked in my eyes. She couldn't believe that I was saying that. She turned around, walked away. That was the last time she hit me. And that was the last time. She would degrade me too, but I was dealing with that. But that I didn't allow her to beat me anymore.
Yeah.
So then I figured out, let's go to college, go to work. I always worked because my family didn't have much money. So I worked hard in school, earned a scholarship to college, tuition scholarship. And I had a choice. I did 2 tracks, psychology, which was human emotions, and the track of medicine. So I decided on let's take 2 tracks. We'll see which one fits for me. The medicine didn't fit. It was too cognitive, and I loved the psychology. So I majored in psychology as an undergraduate, and then went on for a PhD as a graduate student in counseling. And I graduated. I worked in clinics. I worked in schools. I worked in many universities. I was hired as a university to develop their child counseling program, and I did that. And then, so that's where that started. That was the background. If you'd like more on how I created the therapy, I'll give you that. And if you have things you want to add right now, I'm open to that as well.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit into
I don't hear you, Donald. You froze. You're frozen. You want to come in?
Yeah. So it's not uncommon that somebody who was abused themselves becomes abusive later, right? And I think there's a lot of different reasons for that, whether that was the way they felt, that was the only way they could feel love or feel anything. And then later, that's how they gave it back. The fact that when you stood up and it like clicked, that's the side of the story you don't see too much. When that happened, what went through your mind? Was that like an aha moment of like, okay, I'm getting a piece of me back now?
It was an aha moment. It's a little different for me. In many of the people that I work with, they feel worthless. They feel they somehow are to blame. They feel they caused it. They feel defective. They feel inadequate. I didn't feel that way. What I felt was that was something wrong with my mother. It wasn't me. And that's very unusual.
Yeah.
When I had gone into my own therapy, and I explored things, everybody said that. That's really kind of unheard of. Most of the people would suffer that like you did, would feel inadequate and defective in some way and worthless. I didn't feel that way. I felt I had to stop being beaten, and I had to move on and get out of there. So it was a little different than what a lot of people feel. I
Yeah.
was lucky. People ask me, where did that come from? I said, it was just innate. I don't really know where it came from. So
Yeah, that kind of resiliency, man, usually takes years to build it. And it's never done at that age. Usually, I shouldn't say never. It obviously was with you, but it is usually something that comes from on the healing side. When you start that healing process, you start building that resiliency. And I know for me, it did.
yeah,
It, it
understood.
was it was exactly that way because I honestly believed the things that I was telling myself, that I was a piece of crap and
Understood.
and a piss poor father, and this is the reason why everybody hates me. All those things going through my mind, and it just leads you down to that moment where you stand at the crossroads and decide, do I want to end this permanently or do I want to fight forever? And so many people make the wrong choice at that step. Um,
They do.
so when you got to that moment, what part of it was the fact that you said, "Hey, I'm going to take some of this pain and turn it into purpose." And I know you wrote books and you obviously went into psychology, but that moment had to have come before that. When
Yeah,
what
it came around 9 years old. I remember
Wow.
I was sick. I stayed home from school. I had a flu, the cold, or whatever. I was home from
Mhm.
school, and I was watching TV. I returned the channel, and the old black and white movie of Les Miserables was on,
Okay.
and I started to watch it. I said, "This seems interesting," and it's about the misery. Was it written in the 1800s? I believe it's about the misery of the French masses of people, how they struggled with poverty, and it centers around two characters: one who steals a piece of bread to feed his family because they're starving, and the other is the character who chases him, the policeman or cop chases him throughout life, trying to punish him. And throughout it, the suffering, the ordeal that the one who steals a piece of bread goes through, I just was crying. I was sobbing. And around it is the masses of French people who are suffering in tremendous poverty. And I remember I could feel it almost today with the tears flowing down my cheeks. And I said, I would like to do something to help. It came at 9 years old.
Wow.
And then, as I said, then I had to stop being beaten, and I had to figure out a way to survive. And then I would figure out the track that I wanted to go into. So it was also at an early age that I knew that I knew what I
Yeah.
wanted to do.
It's ironic with me. I always grew up on the sports side of things. I wanted to be a professional football player, or even at one point I was a very good bowler. I thought
Mhm.
about pursuing that, but it never crossed to me on a realistic career. And when I got into the upper grades of high school, I realized real quick, I'm not the fastest, so let's cross NFL off.
Mhm.
And I'm not exactly interested in bowling. So what am I going to do? And I took that moment. I said, I think I'd like to explore psychology,
Mhm.
and I wanted to be a criminal psychologist is what
Mm.
I wanted to be,
Interesting.
because it just fascinated me so much with the decisions that they made. And I learned real quick that you've got to be smart. That's probably one of the first requirements. And that part didn't work out so well with me. And so I pursued my love at that time, and we got married. Still married today. Got married in '94, and I joined the military. And it's funny how all the classes that I took in psychology were forgotten when I needed them the most.
Mm.
You know, and I never got that opportunity to build that resiliency. And so for you to find it at 9 that you decide you want to go, help and pursue that, my hat's off to you, because
Thank you.
man, I went in the military because I didn't know what I was going to do.
Mhm.
And I was 19.
Mm.
So
Understood. I was just lucky. I don't know if it's DNA or I don't know what it is. I was fortunate. And I admire your service that you did. And I know obviously you struggled with PTSD from it. And I'm sorry for that. But
well,
for me, I was just lucky to know.
I think what it is, and this is what I have accepted, is I believe that peace comes when you're on the path that you were meant to be on. And we all find that in different ways, and our life experiences can alter the time that it takes to get on that path.
Yes.
And I was just more stubborn, and I'm here now. I'm walking the path that I was meant to be on, and talking with guests like yourself, and podcasting, and understanding a little bit about how, PTSD is not a veteran problem. It's not a child problem. It's a human problem. It's a human reaction to a bad situation.
Correct.
And it's nothing more. And the people that we fought against are obviously humans, and at least I hope they were. And they're dealing with PTSD as well, regardless of what side on that battlefield they were on. And
Yes.
It's ironic that we forget that, right? And we make these problems a me problem. And then you went out and said, let me not make this a me problem. Let me make this a me example.
Yes.
Let's dig into a little bit. So you go through psychology, through college, and you start taking on jobs. What was your first main project that you thought, I'm on that path, I'm doing it, I'm helping people?
Well, when I graduated, I began working in schools with the PhD. I work with children, I work with their parents, I work with administrators for the emotional well-being of children. And then, as I said, I worked in some clinics doing private practice. And I was hired at a university to develop their counseling program with children because of my experience. And what happened as a result of at the university, I began to get referrals. People were coming to me and asking me if I would see them in my private practice. Would I see them personally? And I said I would. And then they told me, because they were abused as children, severely abused as children. And I said, yes, I would see you. Let's give that a shot. And I was trained in a lot of different therapies. I got a PhD. I did internships, and many internships. And I was trained in theories and many techniques. So what I found, I was somewhat successful, because I kept getting more referrals from these kind of people who were traumatized and abused. But I wasn't satisfied with the results. I wanted more long-term permanent healing. I didn't feel I was getting that. The people were satisfied, but I wasn't. I said, there has to be more. So I started to look at what things worked, what things didn't work. I put it together, and I used it on myself as well, because I knew I had to heal emotionally from the abuse that I suffered. I still had those feelings in. So I found a sequence that worked. I found that what worked, what didn't work, and I put it together. It was called source completion therapy, and it involves 3 phases. Now, I did just a background on these people that were hurt. I just want to go over what's they have similar. When a child is abused, okay, when they're beaten, degraded, demeaned, all kinds of feelings are generated. Feelings of worthlessness, feeling of being unloved, unliked, unwanted, feeling of being betrayed, feeling of being insignificant, unimportant, feelings of many feelings are developed. There's just a few of them. So that runs the course of all the people that I work with who were abused. There's different degrees of severity. Some were raped, some were beaten, some were just degraded. But the feelings that come out are those same feelings.
Right.
So I knew that I needed to get to the source of those feelings for each person, get them up, get them out. Because what happens when a child experiences that abuse, stuffs these feelings, they repress them, they start to fester inside. They fester, they boil, and they turn into a toxic emotional brew. So I said, if I could get these feelings out, that would heal a lot of things. Because what would happen is, if they're not healed, the subconscious wants them out. So it's just like eating a bad meal where you get food poisoning. Our body wants that out, and it comes out in every orifice. basically. Okay, it's the same thing for our psyche and subconscious. It wants those feelings out. So if they're just because if they're not out, those feelings will continue and they come out in ugly ways. What happens is the subconscious wants it out, but our conscious still doesn't want to feel it when we get older. We still our instinct is to keep repressing them. So they kind of come out in what I call diversions, addictions, phobias, eating disorders,
Yep.
things like panic attacks, things like compulsions, things like rage, like road rage. It comes out in that. It comes out in all kinds of. I call them diversions because what they do, they divert you from the original source of the pain. Even you could have road rage and break somebody's car, but the source feelings will still be in there until you get to the real source and get them out. So I developed these 3 phases to get to the source of those feelings, get them out, and all those diversions evaporate. That's what I wanted, because then I would know I have really permanent healing. See, some therapies like behavioral therapies, what they'll do, they'll work on a symptom. They might work on the gambling. They might work on the eating. So if you work on that symptom, it's still going to come out the other ways if those feelings stay stored, and if they're still sourced in there. So I said, I know I have to get that out. And with therapies I went to privately weren't doing that. Even the therapies I went to in school, in graduate school, as part of the program, they weren't going deep enough. So I had to go deep enough, and I developed those 3 phases to do it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, those types of things, the addiction and the panic attacks, those are the effects. Those are not the causes.
Correct.
And what it is your body looking for happiness.
Right.
And if you take something away, if you say, look, gambling's bad, you shouldn't be doing this, it's not healthy, but you're not getting that happiness from normal living, you're going to find something else. That was, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that was exactly my out. Texas Hold'em was something that I fell into. I was very good at it, so that made it even worse, because then it made me pursue it and think that it was normal, when the reality was it was just about endorphins and dopamine and finding a way to be happy.
Right. And it's temporary. It's just temporary.
Absolutely. Because, for a professional gambler, we'll even say there's not an addiction there, but a professional gambler, they're very up and down. There's no middle road. They're either at the top of their life or at the bottom. And you add somebody that's doing it to deal with mental pain, it's tenfold. Right. Your highs and lows are tenfold. It becomes extremely unhealthy, because it's not just I had a bad day and I lost. It's I lost because I'm a piece of crap. And you just go back at yourself. I know I'm speaking from experience. I went down that road.
I understand.
And you add addictions like drugs and self-medication and all those things. You can fix all those things, but if you don't fix the underlying cause, like you said, they're gonna manifest in different ways again.
And always 100%. In the decades that I've done this work, I've never seen anybody who doesn't get to the source of those feelings, get that out, who doesn't have all these, I call them diversions, in whatever way a person's trying to comfort themselves. Yeah. It'll only be temporary, those diversions.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it seems like for us soldiers, right, us veterans, that path of healing is very common, right? Which makes sense because our training is very common. And we rely on those when we're trying to fix ourselves. And it starts in several ways, right? It's first admitting, okay, I do have PTSD, it's a problem. And then it goes from that to, now everything I did wrong in my life is because I'm sick. I have a problem. It's not my fault. I have a thing, I have PTSD, and that becomes the victim card, right?
Right. Yes.
And we think we're healing because we accepted that we have PTSD. The truth is, healing hasn't even begun.
Correct.
You're using another deflecting method at this point.
Exactly.
And so the real healing comes from the work that you put in. And that means, one, learning to love the new you and accepting that the new you is not bad because the old you's gone. Those two things are not related, right? And you got to get reintroduced and find that compassion and admit that the problems that have happened is not because you're a bad person.
Great.
Maybe bad choices, but not a bad person. And then for me, it was step 2 was, can I tell my story? Can I tell my story and not feel shame when I'm done? And that's where the long road comes. This is where now you've got to dissect that story and deal with the individual things that happened and pick up those bad decisions. When I wrote my first book, I realized this because it made me become a third person. I wasn't Donald Dunn. I was writing a book about a guy named Donald Dunn that made these piss poor decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the making amends comes from, right? And a lot of those 12-step programs have those same types of things,
mm-hmm.
but it's important, right? And then for me, it brought up another issue, right? How do you let go after you first accepted yourself, apologizing yourself, and forgave yourself for what you did? How do you handle when you go to somebody else and you apologize to them, but they don't accept it? And those two things, we forget that apology wasn't for them. It was for you.
Correct.
Right.
That's
It
accurate.
was you offering amends for what you did.
Right.
If they don't take it, that's not a me problem. That's a you problem. And again, it brings us back and it slows that healing process down because now we have to analyze that and deal with it. When you went through your program and you realized these 3 phases, which phase did you find was the hardest to get people to accept?
Okay, so let me go to the first, then I'll go to the second, and I'll go to the third, and I'll tell you which one is the hardest for people to do because they're frightened of doing it because they have to feel a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first phase, again, people come into me, they don't want to really own the source very, very often. They say they just come in with the symptoms. So the first phase is called awareness. So they come into me with all the symptoms. I know that somebody has hurt them. I know that they've been hurt in some way. So I have them figure out, and we do it through body interpretation of body language, dream interpretation. I help them with that, and some good open questions. Who hurt them? How they were hurt? Who hurt them? And what happened in the event? So that's the first phase. So in a body language, what I use in that phase, because often the body is talking. And they're not really conscious of what it's saying. So I worked with a woman who came into me. She had a tremendous rash all the time. She would get every few months. She would go to doctors. They give her creams. They give her shots. They give her pills. Nothing was working. So she was referred to me because the doctors knew what I do. And I asked her the question, well, let's look under the skin for what that's saying. What is under your skin saying? And she said, no one ever asked me that question before. She laughed a little, and I said, well, think about it. And then she thought, and she said to me, her eyes got wide open, and she said, that's the poison that's still in me from when I sat on my grandfather's lap when I was 10 years old, and he molested me. And I felt he poisoned me and tainted me. So a simple me asking what her body is saying, and that was the start. That was the awareness of how she was, abused. And then we go to the second phase. And in the second phase is I have them go back in time in their minds. Now the phases they're sequenced, but I want each person to be comfortable with each phase before we go on to the next, because it's a safe process for them, because it's a deep process. And it brings up these feelings. So they have to be safe with me and trust me. So in the second phase, I have them go back in time through self-hypnosis. I teach them that, or hypnosis, to the events that occurred. So they're going back in time, and that's bringing up all the feelings. I want them to be in touch with the feelings, the sights, the sounds, and the events, colors, everything that happened in the event. That brings up all these feelings that they've been repressing when they come to me in their 30s or 40s, maybe 20 years, 25 years. Okay, so we get that, and I have them stay there in talking about it. Some then when they come out of the hypnosis, they'll draw about it, they'll write about it. I have a sculptor that worked with me. He would make sculptures about the scenes and what he endured. So I have him do all that to stay with the emotions, to keep expressing it. And then the last phase, that's what's most difficult for people. Okay, it's called completion. The third phase is called completion. What happens in completion is I have them go to the source, the people that have hurt them. And I have them talk to that person, tell them what was done to them and how they felt about it. So a lot of people are scared to do that because number one, if they have any kind of relationship with that, let's say it was a caregiver or father, they don't want to lose it. They don't want to bring up this stuff. So they're also afraid of there's more feelings going to come up, and that's terrifying to them. So that takes some time to get to that phase. Yeah. I don't ever rush this. I make sure that we go at the pace that the people are comfortable with it. But when it's complete, all those feelings are up, they're out, and they're given back to the source. That's why the book is called Give Back the Pain. And all those diversions, this lady had the rashes. She also had an eating disorder. She smoked, she drank. So she had other diversions. They evaporated, they went away. So that's when I know that I've gotten to the permanent long-term healing. So those are basically in a short version of the three phases. The book goes into a little more detail, but it's true. All the stories in the book about how these people were healed through that process. But that's the third phase is the most difficult for most people. It was for me too a little bit.
Yeah. So I was writing these down as you did it, and I was thinking in myself, how I healed and the method that I used. Obviously, it wasn't wrote by nobody. That was, this was me learning as I went. Right. I did some of this, but I may not have done it in this correct order. And the awareness part came from me just finally hitting concrete at rock bottom. I made a horrible mistake with my son, and it was an altercation that became almost physical, and my wife had to get in the middle of it, and it damaged our relationship. That's when the awareness came was I need help. Right. But I didn't know what that meant. Right. And so I tried different things. I went to some therapists that worked great. And then he closed his practice and referred me to another person. And I was like, I don't really need another person. I'm healed. The cold's gone. I've taken my meds. Life's great, only to find out that I did no healing and I did no work towards it. So guess what happened? The problems came right back, Correct. And so, that hypnosis part, I think for me was more so of the storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. And it was me reliving these events over and over, whether it had been from writing the book, telling it on a podcast, and everything else.
Yes, that's the idea. That's the same thing because you get to it.
And I think phase 3 is where I'm at now. And I'm just now learning this with some spirituality help and everything else. I never thought I would hear the day where I could say that the people that we fought against, the people that killed friends of mine, and be able to say, I get it. You were doing the same thing we were doing. And accept that as no blame and let the hatred go. Because that's really where I've been for years, is still having all that hatred built up for it. And there's nobody that I can walk up to, and like in your example of a daughter and a father, right. And do it. But I can let it go myself.
Understood.
And so it makes sense. And your plan is, in my opinion, I can't find any flaws in it. Because it really is true. The part that I like what you kept saying was, you have to build that foundation. You have to build the trust. You have to allow the person to move through these phases at their time, and at the same time still be willing to, not let them stop because of fear. because phase 3 is scary. It really is.
Yes.
Especially if you have to do it in person with another person that you're talking to and seeing and lived with, and all those things that you just mentioned. So absolutely. At what point did you say, let me turn this into a book, and let me share it with the world, that, because somebody pick up that book or watch this podcast, I guarantee you they're going to do the same thing. They're going to go over these phases and analyze, what they've done and why things in the past didn't work versus things in the future could work. Where did the book come from?
It came from, I was working in this practice, a private practice, and a number of the people I work with say, this is so good, it's helped me. Why don't you, get out to the world? Why don't you get this program, so others could be healed? So I said, okay, I'll put it together, and I collected all my notes, and I collected the stories, all the true stories, and all the healing people, and it was really hard to write this because the true stories, and then I teach in it. I teach about the phases. So I teach throughout. I mix the true stories with the teaching of the therapy. I had to go into each character, each person, and feel what they were feeling, because I write the story with feeling and depth. It was very difficult because it was painful. I was feeling their pain and crying as I'm writing. And so it was a hard process, and it was draining for me. So, but I wanted to put it together, and I did it, and people seem to get something out of it. Yes, I worked recently with an actress and a singer, a award-winning actress and singer, who saw me on a show, and she had read my book, and she called me and she said, "Would you please help me? I think this could help me." I've been to a number of therapists, and it wasn't helpful at all. One wanted to, they tried EMDR, it was where you roll your eyes. Just that wasn't helpful at all. Another just tried behavioral therapy, and I felt worse. And then the psychiatrist that I went to told me I was schizophrenic, wanted to give me medication. So would you please help me? I was so turned off, but when I saw you on a streaming site and I read your book, I thought you could be helpful, because I've been taking drugs. I have these toxic relationships. It's affecting my career, and I'm scared I'm just going to ruin everything in my life that I've, and the success that I've achieved. So I said, okay, so I would help her. So I said yes, and then she began working with me. And then I said, look, all of these things, you're not schizophrenic. She was having out-of-body experiences too, out-of-body things. And I said, that's usually because you have so much pain inside, your brain wants to separate from the pain. So that's what that is. So what we have to look at is, let's look at who hurt you, how did they hurt you, and we'll get all that out, and you will be better, and you're not schizophrenic, and you won't need medication. So we worked at it a little bit, and she came up with her father. He really hurt her. He abandoned her. He pushed her away. He wasn't proud of her in her accomplishments. She yearned for his approval, and it devastated her. So that's where all her drinking came to numb all those feelings, the drugs. And when she finished the process, free of all those, I call them the diversions, and on the road, her career continued to go in a really positive direction. So that's just an example of that, of going through those 3 phases, and why I wanted to give it to the world. Going back to the question that you asked.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And the reason why I say that is, in today's world, I think we're at that point. It's no secret. There has been a mental health crisis that's been happening for years in America, and probably other countries as well. But I think we're now to that point where people are accepting, hey, something is going on, and we do need help. And I think people are, just like you said, they're looking for that answer. They're looking for that help, and drugs just doesn't make sense. You tell me if I self-medicate, then drugs are bad, but you're going to give me drugs. And the more research you do on it, there's so much more to the human mind than we'll ever understand in years and years to come. I do believe and this has just became lately as I've gotten into spirituality, I do believe that consciousness is not just a contained in our brain. And when you feel your body full of toxicity, it makes perfect sense with what you said about outer body, because it's got to go somewhere.
Correct.
You know, we come on this earth to learn a lesson. And at some point when we're learning these lessons, they become so toxic that we can't take that time to process and learn from it, because it's trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. And that comes from just pushing it down and accepting the new one until there's just no room.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
so that makes perfect sense to me. And you know, for whatever lessons that those people need to learn, and decided that before they came to earth to learn those lessons, you know, sure, that makes sense. But we still all are given free will, and we still have the choice to learn those lessons, and we still have the choice of how we learn those lessons. So it's great for people to be searching for that kind of content, and people like yourself that are providing it, so people can learn at their own pace.
Yes.
And actually become productive about it.
Yes. I just want to comment on one thing on the medication piece.
Mhm.
There are times where the pain is so severe and the trauma that the people I work with suffer, that they can't function. The panic attacks are every day. They're going into a deep depression.
Right.
So in that case, if they're working with me, medication could really help get the serotonin and the endorphins back in their brain so
Yep.
they can function. Then we can continue with the therapy. So
Right.
I'm not opposed to it. It's just it's sometimes it's given when it doesn't need to be given, and et cetera. So
Right.
as you were saying, so
I think what I should have said is, and this is the way it was for me. There's a misunderstanding about when we're given the medication,
correct.
right? And that is, we treat it like it's cold meds. You know, I take it, the symptoms gone away, I don't need it no more. And that's where it becomes, you know, confusing. You're like, this crap don't work. You told me if I took these meds, I'd be better. And I was better. And then I stopped taking them. And now look, I'm right back again. And it's because those meds are, just like you said, they're for the symptoms. They're let's push that cold out of the way so that we can focus on the work that we need to do.
That's exactly right, Don.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And then, you know, because if you don't focus on the work and just take the medication, those feelings are still in there, and
Yeah.
they're going to come out. They will still come out, even on the medication. They'll come out
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
ugly ways.
And they'll be even worse, because just because you're on the meds doesn't mean that trauma doesn't happen. You know, you're still going to have bad days, and,
That's right.
and things are still going to be horrible, and you're still going to add those on top of it, you know?
That's
And,
right.
and so absolutely, I'd agree 100%.
Look at road rage. You know, it's in the papers all the
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
It's in the papers. So there's two guys fighting for a parking spot, or one guy didn't signal and the other guy is enraged over it. And the one gets out maybe with a tire iron and the other guy a gun, and they're going to kill each other over a parking spot.
Right.
So I know, you know, it's never talked about in the newspapers that this stuff is deeper. These people are having rage inside because they were hurt in some way. I know that. So that's the source of it. Somebody hurt them to the source that they want to kill somebody. They are so enraged at it.
Yeah. No, you are 100% correct. And, you know, for me, I get it on the veteran side, you know, and it's actually part of the military training. You know, when we come back from deployments, they don't even allow for like the first week and a half, 10 days. They don't allow the single soldiers off the base. You know, they keep them on the base because they know all of that anger is still built up. And if they go to a bar and start drinking and somebody bumps into them, it's not going to just be a fight, because they're not used to just fighting to find out who wins and both people walk away. It's not over until somebody's dead.
There you go.
You know, and that's exactly because of the anger that was instilled in us and the tools that we have to use. So when our decision-making process skills come in, we reach in that tool bag and we only got that one tool, and that's anger. And then you add alcohol or even other drugs to it, and it just compiles and it just makes it worse. But
Exactly.
that's where the military fails, because they know why they're making people stay on the base and try to slowly acclimate them back. But they're not doing anything to deal with that trauma, and so it's a symptom. Let me
It's a
sit you over here and
tragedy that
see.
they're not doing it.
Well,
It's a tragedy that they're not doing enough.
yeah.
I'm upset about that, hearing that.
Yeah, and I've got a program that I've been working on, and a petition that I'm trying to get signed to get the military to change the way we look at psychiatrists. You know, you walk to a military base right now, and there's going to be one or two psychiatrists that never deploy. They may even not even be military, they may be civilians, and they're dealing with all the soldiers on that base. And every soldier that walks in that door has a problem, and you're looked at just like that. You have a problem. And what they need to do is they need to put psychiatrists in the battalions as another soldier
Great
that
idea.
trains with them. They're part of the team.
Great
They're
idea.
doing training on resiliency and performance training, as well as how to deal with fight and flight and blood pressures and all these things. And it'll make you a better warrior. It's going to make you a better person, and you're going to catch these symptoms at a much earlier rate, so that PTSD becomes a broken arm. We take you out of the battle, we fix the broken arm, we let you heal, and then you can go back to being another soldier if that's what you choose, or leave the military already healed and have that thought process. But you've got to get rid of the stereotype, and you got to be willing to put them as an equal, and that takes money, and people seem to like that part of it. They like money.
Well, is anybody hearing you in this or listening to you? Because this is a great
Uh,
idea. I like it.
Not yet. I've been working on this for a while, and again, I went through change.org to try to get people to sign the petition. I've sent letters to Pete Hegseth, and got, I don't even know if he gotten them, because I got no response or anything back. I mentioned it on as many shows just to make people hear it, and everything else. I've reached out to sports psychiatrists, one from the Chicago Bulls, and all these main guys that are dealing with making these athletes, that are looked at as investments by the team,
Right.
even better, and trying to find that program that they use, and how they use these visualization techniques and all that stuff, so we can implement that into training for the soldiers, before battle. And there should be a way to help train for PTSD, because it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. If you send people to combat, they're going to have problems. This is not normal stuff that people see,
Absolutely. It's not.
So
Could I
yeah,
ask? I hope that blossoms into fruition for you, because it's a really good idea, and I admire you for doing that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I hope it does too.
May I ask where you were deployed, if you could?
I spent 68 months between Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
Oh,
So I was in from 94, and I retired in 2014. I did 10 years in the special ops community. So deployments, that was after I went to that community right before 9/11. So I got there in September of 2000, I think it was.
yeah.
And then a year later, 9/11 happened. And man, it was on the road constantly from that point forward.
Understood. Yeah. Well, how could you not have PTSD with all of what you were through? I understand. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the other part of that program that I was talking about, is there needs to be a limit. You should not just take soldiers and just keep compounding them, sending them and sending them and sending them and sending them. At some point, you should recognize that they now need to be separated and used for training, and you're going to keep soldiers much longer by taking them away from the battlefield and letting them train the troops that are going to be going forward, because that's the biggest reason why your senior leadership leaves. They get burned out,
Right. Of course.
So I'm not going to give up, and at some point maybe AI will make money so irrelevant that people will start looking at it, because
Yeah, I hope so. I like I said, I like the idea. I love that you do it, and would want it implemented. So
Yeah, absolutely.
keep at it, you know.
I care about the guys, man, the troops, your brothers and sisters that are out there, and that's extending even more when you start looking at our first responders, you know, and they're seeing this stuff over and over and over, you
Yes.
know. They don't get that break. The soldiers at least come back for a year and can not have to deal with it on a daily basis. That police officer, you know, New York City Police Department guy, he may be seeing it 6 times a week, every week.
Right. Yeah,
You know?
I understand. Yes, I'm in New York. You know, so I understand. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I
I
want to
admire your passion to do that, to continue it. I really do admire that.
thank you. Um, I want to hit this topic. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. For me, when I wrote my first book was obviously about my time in the military, and I wrote it as a document for my wife and kids because I never talked to them about the things that were going on. Obviously, they seen I was not headed in the right direction, and things were not as good as I perceive them to be, and tell them. But I didn't want to have that conversation with them, and so I wrote this as a document. My daughter asked me to um, publish it, and that's when the work really became hard because you just don't know what you don't know. So the editing process is brutal, and when you're doing your first book and you're doing it all yourself and you don't know what you're doing, um, it becomes very daunting. And I made a lot of mistakes. When you first started your book, what was it? What was your experience like? Did you say, "Holy cow, I might have bit off more than I could chew"?
No, I didn't say that. The first experience I had, years and years of doing this work,
Yeah,
so it was just a matter of encapsulating it and getting it out on paper. Again, the process was hard for me because I would feel each character in each story.
yeah,
In order to write it and make sure the writing was consistently the same throughout, consistently good
yeah,
throughout, and at the same level. So that was the difficulty. It was the feeling of it. It was really painful. I had all the material over years that I collected, so the material was there. Editing, I had a publisher when it was first done that said it didn't need much it didn't need much editing. But
wow,
my wife helped me also. She's in the similar field as I was, so I always went to her to clean up some of the grammar.
yeah,
But the concept was there, and the first publisher, really liked it, and I went from there. But the hardness again was the feeling that I had to feel each person's pain. So there was tons of
yeah,
stories throughout there, and I would go to a local diner in the morning, and I would do it before I went to work. They would know I was writing. The waitresses would pour coffee. I would stay there. I'd go to public parks to write because I needed time to just clear my head and have peace around me.
yeah,
So where I wrote was important. So I would try to pick places each day, but the feelings were intense, and it required a lot of pain for me to do it. So that was the tough part for me.
yeah. I relate to that because that's where I guess that's what made my editing process. So you know, I did self publishing, so I did the editing, I did all that stuff, and that meant I had to reread this and relive it. But I think that's because of that. That's where the healing really helped.
Understood.
Had I just wrote it for my family and never touched it again, I don't know that I would have got the same effects from it.
Right.
But
Understood.
it was tough, and not being good at English and everything else as well, you know, added to that stress of trying to make it. And then I fell into that what has to be perfect. People are going to read this now, and at some point you just got to finally say it's good. Let it go. And I did get some good reviews, so
Terrific.
uh, I
Terrific.
did I did enjoy that.
What's the
Um,
name? What's the title of your book?
it's called Echoes of War: The Silent Transition of a Soldier. So
Mm.
that was my first book, and since then I wrote um, a few other books. I wrote a fiction book that I use the fiction to teach people that just don't understand that depression and stuff like that is real just because you can't see it. So I took the phrase, you know, that everybody says, "Hey, they're fighting their demons," or whatever. So I said, I called the book When Demons Follow You Home. And I took a group of homeless veterans that live under the I-75 overpass in Atlanta.
Right.
And I used that character because nobody's going to believe that they're seeing real demons. They're just alcoholics and druggies and everything else.
Right.
And I took the physical manner of the demon and the symptoms that they were putting on those veterans was exactly what somebody feels when they're going through depression and PTSD and all those same things.
Right.
From substance abuse to hating yourself and feeling like you're letting people down and all of those, and these demons are feeding off of that. So I just added a aspect for somebody to see that's what's causing it. That guy over there in the corners hurting that guy over here,
Yes.
And that's the only reason I wrote that as a fiction book, was just to kind of get that message across.
Understood.
And I wrote a book about the how to train your mind for life and battle, and it uses a lot of those same techniques that I would like to hopefully help implement in a program to prepare soldiers for battle. So it's gotten easier. The more you do it, you learn the editing process can come later. Let's just get the story down and stop writing a paragraph, going back and editing it, because it's going to change anyways.
Yeah, understood. Yes, I do understand that. So I hope you're proud of what you've done. Those are nice accomplishments.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it goes back to, when the Lord puts you on the path that you were meant to be, and that's when real peace comes, and you can look back and say, man, I had some tough lessons I learned, and now I'm here to help others learn those lessons.
Right. And you're on your path, a good path, and
Absolutely.
that's healing, and it's a good place to be.
Absolutely. Well, I like to end with a fun question. If you could discuss your book with somebody alive or dead, who would you like to sit down and talk to about it?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Well, my hero there goes back a while. Was John Fitzgerald
Okay.
Kennedy.
Yeah.
He was a war hero, and when I read that book, I was stunned by what he accomplished in World War II. He saved men by swimming long distances. He held them on his back.
Yeah.
And he got out of the war as a hero, and he wanted to help humanity, and he became president. So I would like to sit down with him. I would love that. He was the hero. I was 13 at the time, 12 maybe, 11, right around there. And I read his book, Profiles in Courage. So
wow. Yeah. I wrote an article for a Better magazine, and I wrote it about the differences in leadership style between presidents that served in the military versus those that did not.
Yes.
And when you start researching that, it is a huge difference. And I'm not here to say that because you didn't serve, you're not a good leader. I'm just saying your leadership style and the things that you find important are completely different. And JFK is a great example. He cared about humanity and the people.
He did.
And that is the side that, veteran leaders come from, because they're so used to putting the people before them. You put your squad, your platoon, your company, your battalion, whatever, you put your guys, your war fighters' health being before you.
Right.
And that seems to be a trend that carries over into politics. I mean, maybe not so much now. Now it's about, okay, let me serve 5 years in the reserves and I'll use that on my resume and in my political campaigns. But,
Right.
In the olden days, all the way back to George Washington, you could see it. And the ones that came from businesses, they even had a different type of leadership style. And they cared more about building and expanding and growth and all the things that are extremely important to a company,
They did, and as you said, that's Kennedy cared about humanity as a whole, and I admired that when I was a young man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to give you that opportunity, Mr. Bleck, to come forward and tell everybody where they can find your books and find you if they would like to get some help or reach out to you and potentially have you as a person to help provide that help.
Sure. Or any questions they have, they're always welcome to ask me. You can get me on my website. That's Robert Bleck. See, I just lost you.
No, I made you bigger, so
Oh,
everybody.
okay. So you could find me at robertbleck.com. That's my website. And the book's available on Amazon. And there's a Kindle version, and there's a paperback version. So those are the two places you could get me or my book. So that's the best place to do it.
All right. Well, I hope everybody got something out of this. I know I did. I even took some notes and found that it's very interesting in how some of the stuff I did really cosigns along with this method. So make sure you go to the links. They'll be in the bio down below, and you can click on them. We'll make sure that you can get right there to Amazon and go directly to the book and purchase it there. As well as, reach out and follow. And if you need some help, man, take that hardest step. And that's just admitting that you need some help and reach out to somebody, whether it be me or Mr. Bleck or the VA or anybody. Don't think that, there's not help out there. And if your one method doesn't work, there's method 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, somebody else is out there. So, just know that people care. So, I hope all of y'all have a great day. Don't forget, man, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.
Mm-hmm.